we're going to go through a lot of scripture. So, as we've been talking about, and I think you were here on the first talk, right?
Yeah.
So you're aware that we've been talking about the second Exodus, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to continue in that study, and I'm going to actually break it down into three components. And these three components are the first component, which would be the dry bones phase, and we'll look at Ezekiel 37. Have any of you ever read Ezekiel 37 in any way or form that you think you might understand it? No.
Understand it, no, but I can write it out.
Well, the goal tonight is to kind of get an understanding in it, and I have to admit there is a lot of Old Testament scripture that with the doctrine of the second Exodus, all of a sudden these scriptures make sense. So we're going to look at as number one is the wake up, and we'll look at Ezekiel 37, the wake up of Israel, and then number two will be the gathering, where we gather together. And number three will be the wilderness. So, and what is going to happen while we're in the wilderness. So we're going to start off by looking at, now I don't know if you saw this. This popped up on Enoch study.
Yeah.
And I liked it. And so I blew it up and I printed a copy of it. And if you like it and you want a copy of it, let me know. But Dawson, the woman of the original Hebrew, have you been watching any of their videos?
I've been listening to her, yeah.
Yeah, have you, Gene?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, good.
The Enoch 1, 2,
Yeah.
first, third, and today it was the sixth. Well, that's something that you talked about. Sixth, but yeah, I'll listen to that.
Okay,
I was
good.
busy, I didn't comprehend
Right,
all of it, but
right.
yeah.
So what are you thinking? You've both been looking at the Enoch study, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, it's a second witness.
It is great witness, isn't it? Yeah, it pretty well locks in that Enoch should have been in our Bibles in the first place.
I talked to, it's funny because I talked to my brother, no, actually, I talked to my wife about that. But she hasn't studied anything like that. So
Yeah.
that as a second means of understanding the Bible more.
Yeah. It's surprising how quickly we can dismiss something that we haven't even looked at.
Mhm.
You know, the evidence. I mentioned to one of the pastors that I was studying Paleo Hebrew, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. That could really lead you astray. That's kind of like Kabbalah. You know, that's mysticism." And I'm thinking, and I didn't answer him. Obviously, he doesn't even know what it is, since it's historically the original writings of the Hebrews.
Wow.
But we can gather information from different people and different sources over time, and it'll ferment in our minds, and to where all of a sudden we're so far from the truth because we've never actually put the time into it. And so I didn't approach him on it. I didn't say anything on it. I just giggled and said, "Okay, Lord, why does he think that?" And the Lord and I had a good conversation. Well, that's what happens when we don't seek truth. You know, he's just going to accept the belief that Paleo Hebrew, whatever he's been fed, the lies and over time, that those are true. And that's true. We have to admit that's true about all our doctrine. If we don't look at it, and that's why Atia, she sent me a video by a lady who believed in the second Exodus and doesn't anymore. And she had a big long video, and she's had quite a few teachings now on why the second Exodus isn't true. And so I appreciated Tia sending it to me, and I watched it. But as I did with anybody that teaches, I started looking for the scripture she was using to make her points, and she would make many points without scripture. It was just her opinion and without a scriptural background. Well, we all do that. But as she started using scripture, and when she did use scripture, I looked at the scripture, she was taking it out of context. She was making it fit her new doctrine. You remember the story of Job in that same vein, right? So Job had many children. And remember when Satan accused that the only reason that Job worshipped the father was because the father protected him. And the father says, well, you can do anything you want to him, just, you can't hurt him. And Satan killed his children and his animals. And then eventually, Father gave him permission to even make Job very miserable and in pain. And as Job finished this process where we learn what constraints the Father puts on the wicked, angels in heaven, and what they can and cannot do, and also how the Father sustains through these stressful times in our life because he continually still praised God. What happened to Job at the end? He had many, many more children. And he was full of years. And I'm thinking, well, dear, we may.
Later,
Yeah.
New bodies.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not
Maybe,
sure
I
we're
don't
going to
know.
get new bodies.
I don't know how it's all going to work out or if it's even
Yeah.
true, but it sounded like something hopeful.
Well, let's discuss that because in 1 Corinthians it says, in a twinkle of an eye,
Right.
the dead will rise, and then those of us who are still here will be changed.
Right.
Okay, so if that happens when Yeshua comes down on the cloud, what about those that are born to those that don't have new bodies in the millennium? When do they change?
Right.
Because the passage says, in a twinkle of an eye, we will all be changed. So what if that we're putting that in the wrong spot? What if the all change doesn't happen until the end of the millennium?
That's possible.
And what if, because we are being ruled by a righteous king and the earth is being restored under righteousness, and we won't sin because the Father has given us a new heart, though there'll be others that will sin, what if the processes of aging just reverse and the curse is disappearing? And that is what's happening to Father's people. Maybe that's a possibility. I've been looking for that because I fight with this new body thing going into the millennium when just what Tia said and Dawson said, well, go into the millennium in your body, you could still have children. And the curse is going away. And we're going to look at some scriptures that show us.
Because look how old they got back in those days. So
Almost 1,000 years,
yeah.
almost a millennium. And the only reason they didn't make it to a millennium, I think, is because they had a flood date. And that flood had to come. Okay. So we're going to start off and we're going to look at Ezekiel 37. Now, this is the dry bones passage.